Welcome to Fun and Fundraising, everybody, the podcast where we talk with people behind top events to showcase how they positively transform the communities they serve. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, and today I'm really excited to have my friend Emily Sander on as a guest. Emily is the founder of Next Level Coaching, and who she primarily works with are chief of staffs. And one thing that I have noticed with people who are especially trying to get to decision makers is a lot of times too much focus is focused on the decision maker, which I know is the prize, and not so much about the individuals and the people around them, because they are absolutely instrumental in helping make your life easier to secure a sale or a donation or whatever it may be. And Emily has a vast experience and career in being a chief of staff, and has started her own practice helping other chiefs of staffs optimize their role. So I thought she'd be the perfect person to come on today and talk about this. And with that, Emily, welcome, and we're so thrilled to have you here today.
It's an absolute pleasure to be with you. And Rob, it was so good to see you. We did a pod swap, so you were on my podcast, and I love that you reached back out and asked me to be on yours. So pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So, and talk a little bit about your professional journey and how you actually founded Next Level Coaching, because everyone gets to a point to where they are through a whole range of experiences. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Yes, so I had a whole corporate career, started at Microsoft, Amazon. I was on the testing team for the original Kindle device. So that was my claim to fame there. But we launched that in '07. From there, that opened some doors, worked for a series of startups, small to medium businesses, met a lot of founders and private equity folks and things like this, but built international client management teams from scratch. We scaled operations teams. And then I ended up being a chief of staff for a digital marketing company. And that was a lot of fun. Did that for 5 years. And I was kind of thinking about what was next for me career-wise. And the favorite part of my roles in all of my career were the mentoring, guiding, advising, like like Jennifer doesn't feel confident speaking up at team meetings, and Christian didn't think he could lead our EMEA region, but he really can. And those were the things that were memorable and fulfilled me. And so I thought, oh, if I can wake up and do my favorite part of the day all day long, which is coaching, wouldn't that be wonderful? So that was the dream. And then 3 years ago, there was a fork in the road. And for a variety of reasons, it was the time and place to shove all the chips on the table and go into this thing. So that's what I did.
That's fantastic. And how cool that you were on the original, and literally probably everyone has one. So you have helped make life easier and so much more accessibly readable for everybody. So that's really cool that you found, I think most importantly, that you found what you were most passionate about and you jumped in and you pursued it. And that's a really noble and awesome thing to do. And, before we go further in, for anyone who is not familiar, talk about what a chief of staff is.
Yes. So at parties, the party answer is it's the strategic right hand person for the CEO. The short answer. My medium answer is this analogy. I go, the 6-pack cans of soda you get at the store? People go, yeah. You know the plastic thing on top of the cans that holds all the cans together? Yeah, that's a chief of staff. It holds the leadership team together and makes sure everyone's moving in the right direction. Oh, okay. So that gets them a little bit closer. So those are my kind of party gala answers.
I appreciate you doing that. So really what you are is the glue.
Yes, connective tissue, glue, absolutely.
You really, and you do hold everything together. And it amazes me how much a chief of staff knows. And we'll get a little bit into that a little bit further on in our segment here. But, talk about, I'd like for us to dive into the first thing. And really, because you're the glue, glues are dot connectors, because you kind of know where to take A to B to C to D all the way to Z. So talk about how chief of staffs are the ultimate dot connector. Maybe provide some examples as well.
Sure. So a chief of staff will work with their principal. That's the primary person they're supporting. Typically, it's the CEO, but it could be COO, CTO, et cetera. And then the chief of staff will work very closely on a daily basis with all the rest of the executive leadership team. And then they will very often move below that to like the VP management level. So they know who's who in the zoo. and they know who like officially has the title for something and who actually can get it done for you and who actually has the political clout behind the scenes. And so if you make a connection with the chief of staff, then they're kind of like going to a club and they go, come over here, and they open the velvet rope and you can come through the line and get to someone quicker. So sometimes it's seen as a gatekeeper, which is not the greatest word I would use, but I know that people have the impression, oh, a chief of staff is like the gatekeeper. You have to get past the gatekeeper to the primary person you want to get to. And in fact, if you play your cards right, having that connection and building that relationship with the chief of staff will be a shortcut to getting to the person you want to.
Well, absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned the thing. And I see this happen all the time where you think it's one person, but it is another person. Could you share an example of what that might look like? It doesn't have to be in an event context, but maybe kind of in a salesy or maybe even development context.
Yeah, I think so. Titles can be deceiving, right? So you can like internally you give someone a title for 100 different reasons. It might be to placate them. It might be to create parity over here with this other job title in this whole other department. You don't know exactly why someone has the title they have. Sometimes it's indicative of what they do and generally what area they work in. Great. But like who is really in charge of if we go to this event? Who is really in charge of the dollar amount we're going to spend here? Like, who is really in charge of will this person attend or will that person attend? So, like those kind of decisions, you could have like the VP of strategic initiatives be doing that. You could have the head of, media and corporate events doing that. You could have some just amorphous kind of title doing that. So sure, titles can maybe get you to the right general direction, but if you want to pinpoint, here's who actually makes that call, chief of staff will know, or will be that person themselves.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you're bringing that distinction up because events, like anything else, it's all about ROI. And ROI for events is a little bit more difficult than a digital ad where you can just look at the
Sure.
clicks, see who's bought and whatever. It's really going to be the value and that the decision maker or whomever is sent to go finds it worthwhile. Do you have an instance where you can ever recall sending someone to an event and they came back and maybe they weren't thrilled about the prospect of going, but afterward they were like, you know what? I'm really glad I went because I was able to connect with X or connect with Y or connect with Z.
Yeah, I mean, I remember our head of sales. So globally, he would travel around and go to all these different conferences, and there would be a whole big thing about which conferences we would attend. And there was this one, I won't say the name, but he didn't want to go, and he was like, "This is kind of beneath me." It was his attitude. But he went, and for whatever reason, he met at one of the not the main event, but kind of a breakaway room and kind of a workshop area. He met folks that opened a door that led to one of our most effective strategic partnerships, basically. It wasn't a customer. It was like, we have now a channel partner with these folks. So it's one of those things where you never know who's going to open a door, who's going to know this person. And then that's how that happened. But had he not gone to that event, it was a fluke thing. This guy was there. And so that ended up being, if we can reverse engineer, how did we get this channel partner, which the board asked us, like, how in the world did we get this? Well, we sent Keith to this thing over here, and he met these two people who opened doors.
And that goes to show the importance of showing up. And he checked whatever I don't want to go at the door, and he was fully present. Because I've seen executives not do that, and you can just tell that they don't want to be there. And it's like after 3 seconds, everyone tries to scramble for the hills. So, can you share? Was there anything that you said to him to change his mindset from gosh, this is a chore that's beneath me to, okay, I see the value and why I was chosen to be sent.
For that particular case, it was we need to have a strong ambassador at this particular conference. We want to have brand recognition. We were trying to go to an adjacent market. And so, look, it's not something you're totally comfortable with. It's not something like the size and just the tone and tenor of it was not what he was used to. But we're breaking into this new thing. This is where you need to be. You represent us and you can make us here. You can make a name for us here. And that kind of, okay, I can be the one to, yes, you can. Yes, you can. So you're our brand ambassador. And also, I mean, you talked about this so beautifully on the conversation with me in my podcast, having those conversations and then bringing back that intel. Like you get to be the guy who can be the hero internally because you'll have all this information and we're looking for that. We're hungry for that. So he kind of got to be the hero in that sense of it as well. And so I think those two things kind of, okay, perked him up. And then once he gets to a conference, once he was there, oh my gosh, he was in his element. He was smiling, he was charming, he was laughing, he made people feel important. Like he could do that. It's just getting him there. And once he's in it, he's there. And then he'll come back like, oh my gosh, it was great. And I was great. And look how much I did. So it was one of those deals.
That almost sounds like the first swim, like when you put your foot in the pool in early June and the pool is really cold
Oof.
and you don't want to do it and then you jump in and you're like, "Oh my God, this is amazing." And then you don't want to get out of the pool. That basically sounds like how that worked with him. And I think that, that's fantastic. And I want to, the relationship bit, you basically were, as a chief of staff, talk a little bit about what are some ways that you as a chief of staff, because I think a lot of people struggle with this, that you're able to vibe with and get along and successfully corral people with multiple different mindsets, because the way that you are going to deal with the chief revenue officer is going to be so different than how you deal with the chief financial officer. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a full-time job in and of itself. Just the CEO by itself is a full-time job. Keeping that person sane and focused and in the right headspace, whew, that's a lot. Then you add the entire executive team, and that's like, okay, it might be an island of misfit toys we have over here, but everyone's got to get along. Again, that connective tissue or glue. And I would jokingly say part of my job is to be an executive therapist because people would have their stuff and personalities, and that's just part of it, a coach approach to leadership. But being organized, knowing what's important to people. What do you want? What does this job mean to you? What scares you? What makes you nervous? Like you should know all of those things about your people, about your folks. Take care of them. Make sure they know I'm for you. You want to look good? My job is to make you look good. Like let's go do that. How you do that is by doing X, Y, and Z. Okay, what's important to you is to be prepared. Like you want to look at the data, you want to have all your ducks in a row. Let me give you the source material before you walk into this big meeting. I'm going to help you be successful. So really figuring out, okay, what does this job mean to them? This is my dream job, Emily. I've worked 10 years to get to this job. This means everything to me. Okay, cool. Emily, I like my job, but I'm going to school for something else. And as soon as I'm done with that, I'm going to go be a doctor or a firefighter. Okay, great, cool. But you should know that about all your folks and about all your people. So I think for me, just I'm naturally like a coach, so I naturally fell into that, and I actually love that part of it. But I think really taking an interest and curiosity in people will get you a long, long way.
Interest and curiosity is key, but you touched on something with what you said with getting along with them, and that is understanding what they want. And I kind of want to flip the question kind of on its head and talk about how this will probably be the more fun part of the podcast. But we'll start a little dry and then we'll get more fun. But what is one easy way for someone to engage with a chief of staff to build trust and credibility? Because you're the entrance point to get people what they want. And I think, your insights on that would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean the first thing is do not confuse a chief of staff with an executive assistant. That will automatically disqualify you because you don't understand what a chief of staff is. Chief of staff can sniff that out from a mile, and if you disrespect them or anything like that, they're like, "No, I don't have time for you." I would say be organized and prepared. So chiefs of staff have a full calendar. They have their calendar, they have their CEO's calendar, they have everyone, they like not in like I'm managing their calendar, but just everyone else's, their priorities and agendas and how these things work cross department, et cetera, et cetera. They have a full load. So if you are coming there being like amorphous and nebulous and I'm vague and I'm like, what are you talking about? Be organized, be prepared, be clear. And then I would say, figure out, build a relationship with this person. Like, are you a chief of staff who is more finance oriented? Are you a chief of staff who is more sales ops, marketing, front end oriented? Do you have the technology team? Because at your company, the technology team is the largest and most important team. Like, kind of like, what kind of chief of staff are you? But where do you play? Oh, you've known your principal for 12 years. You've worked with him 3 times before. Oh, you know him and he trusts you. So got it. Okay, there's that connection. Oh, it's a brand new CEO. You've been there for 7 years and you've transitioned this new CEO in. It's his first year. Like figure out kind of the landscape there. I think all those things go a long way. Sometimes, Rob, sometimes chief of staff is like chief of everything or chief of, we don't have a dedicated person for this, so the chief of staff is going to do it. And events and where my principal spends time is up to the chief of staff. So they might very well be the decision maker. I've known chiefs of staff who I'm like, I tell my principal to be here on this time at this date, you're talking to these people, and she does it. I tell him to get on a plane, go to Singapore, go speak at this keynote, and she does it. Like that, sometimes it's that relationship. So just, I know I said a lot there, but hopefully that gives you a sense of some things you can do when you speak with the chief of staff.
It absolutely does. Now, is there a particular person that reached out to you, and it can either be someone you had a history with or someone that didn't, where you were like, God, that was a really good question, and everyone should ask this of every chief of staff because it will just most chiefs of staff will open up to it.
I mean, a classic one is how can I make your principal look good? Um, I mean, like a correspondent, like, how can I make your life easier? Like, that's music to a chief of staff. Oh my goodness. Like, who are you? I want to hug you. I think if you can be prepped, and I think I've had people personally outreach and give me a custom, I see that you just launched this product, they read a press release. And I think that that means for Alex, da 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 da, that was our CTO, and it was a product launch. And so I was wondering if you guys would come and talk at this conference in our Q&A panel about X, Y, and Z, because I think that would help you with this product and help us with this message about blah, 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 blah. That was personalized. That was, you don't send that boilerplate to everyone. You actually took the time to understand what that could mean for us, and you identified a win-win. That was clearly a win for you as well. That I was like, I will happily jump on a call and talk to you more. It's not a guarantee, slam dunk, I'm going to go, but I will absolutely talk to you more because you've done your research.
So doing the research and asking, I like the whole idea of beneficial, because anything where you're involving a chief of staff, ultimately good relationships are partnerships. They're not one-sided or the other. And that's just an awesome piece of advice. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, what are some, for lack of a better word, tragic ways that you have seen people engage with chief of staffs? Where you said medium earlier, there was once a socialite who once said to me, well, how'd that go over medium? So medium has a different context to me that it does to you. But what are some tragic ways that you've seen people engage with chiefs of staff?
I mean, the biggest one is treating them like an assistant. That's just gonna, oh, that's a tripwire right there. Um, I think just being disorganized. I've had people where I give them time, and I even give them time with our CEO and CFO, and I think it's prep, and then I go, I turn it over to you. Can you like do a brief explanation, get our folks up to speed, da da da, and they cannot explain what they do, and I'm like, are you are you joking? Like this is your cause. This is literally what you're due. I have my people on. This is their time, and you don't have your stuff together enough to even do the 30-second, 90-second. Here's who we are. Here's what we're trying to do in the world. Here's our mission. And here's how we'd love to incorporate you and have you be a part of that. We'd love to partner with you in this way. 30, 90-second spiel at the beginning of a call, and they muff that up. And I'm like, already you've burnt my reputation with my folks, and you've set yourself up to have to overcome something for this entire call with my CEO and CFO. So that's a tragic start right there.
Tragic out of the gate. Now, you mentioned something, at the beginning of that answer about, don't treat us like an assistant. So, can you give us an example of a way you might phrase a particular thing to an assistant versus how you would frame that particular thing to a chief of staff, just so that our listeners have kind of an understanding of how you talk to them a little bit differently?
That is a good question. Okay, so I would say depending on where you are and kind of the relationship, if to an assistant it's like, hey, this is Emily. I spoke with Rob, like set me up for the 3 o'clock slot. He said that would be okay. With a chief of staff, you might be like, hey Rob, like it's Emily. We met at the thing. I hope your stuff is going well. I want to give you a quick update on this, this, and this. And then if so and so had time later this afternoon, I think we wanted to connect then. So it's just a little bit, I don't know if that explains the difference, but there's just a little bit, there's like here's the calendar person who can get me on the calendar, boom, boom, boom. And here's like the relationship person. And I'm not saying don't build a relationship with the EAs because they're important too, but there's just like, hey, the chief of staff, for lack of better phrase, might be able to do something and get me something now in 6 months, in 6 years. So building that relationship and just adding that extra time to put in those extra layers makes a world of difference sometimes.
That was a really well said. And the one thing I kind of noticed is you were much more specific with the answer with the admin than you were with the chief of staff. So it's almost like, you've got a box with hard edges, maybe sometimes when you're giving direction to an assistant, but you've kind of got to almost think like it's like, like you're filling a balloon with water or a balloon with air. You kind of got to give it its room to kind of expand and contract a little bit and give you the power to get them what they want within your own parameters that you have to deal with juggling all the things that you have to do as chief therapy officer. You had said that. There's another word for CTO now, but you get what I'm saying with that. I love that answer. And while we're on the subject of decision makers, and my point of view is I'm one of those people, I don't really pay attention to the principal that much. I always pay attention to the people around them. So
Mhm.
I am always watching for how that decision maker treats their staff, whether it's the chief of staff, whether it's, a fellow executive, or whether it's, the person working in the cafeteria. And if you see lots of turnover, you kind of know that that chief of staff is probably going to be a little bit extra to work with. So what advice would you give to engage a chief of staff whose boss is a little extra and maybe has a reputation, let's say deservedly so, that precedes them, that they're, that they're just difficult to work for and they have a lot of staff turnover and all those things?
That's where a chief of staff can help you navigate that. So that's where it's like, oh, I might not want to interact with the principal. Chief of staff might be my best friend right now because they can kind of guide me, navigate me. Maybe my interaction with the principal is best if it's limited. And so let the chief of staff do the heavy lifting, let them do the hard work. That's absolutely a scenario that you can run into. Similar to you, I look at things like, okay, how are they treating the people around them? I think a chief of staff too, if they have a principal at an event. So when I was there, I would always know where my principal was. I try to be in different parts of the room, but I would always know where he was, and I would always be able to get to him if I had to. And I would always figure out like, is he doing okay? Does he feel comfortable? Does he feel confident? Does he know who to talk to? And I remember one time, I could tell just because I knew him so well, something was bothering him, and he kept looking over. I was like, something's not right. He's talking to this person he needs to talk to, but something's not right. And I looked over to where he was glancing toward. I didn't see anything, and I was like, what is bugging him? And so I moved around, and there was a person in a wheelchair who kept getting bumped by the staff in and out of the kitchen. And this person had broke their leg, and so they didn't have a chair, and so this poor guy was like getting like bumped, and it wasn't the waiter's fault, but my CEO was like seeing that and he couldn't do anything. I was like, okay, so let me go move the wheelchair to a different spot, and that just calmed him down and also helped the guy in the wheelchair and the waiter. So just little stuff like that. A good chief of staff will always have a pulse on everything that's happening in the room.
Well, what I like about that answer is it kind of shows grace under pressure. And A, and B, there is no such thing as a perfect event. Things are going to happen, but that you've got the emotional intelligence to kind of, kind of have a side eye, because you kind of have to, as a chief of staff, you kind of have to have your eyes in 19 different places all at one time at an event. That is not that is not an easy thing. So I really liked that example. And while we're on the subject of events, talk about, let's just say an organization is planning an event and they want your principal or one of your principals there. What advice would you give to someone looking to engage a chief of staff as part of the overall event planning and getting them there process?
Yeah, so I think there's the mission alignment and how is this a win-win? And then once that's established and it's a yes, then make the logistics as straightforward and clear and as easy as possible. So I'll give you a scenario. Many chiefs of staff will have this under their purview, but like we just said, they have 47 other things to do, and they might not know how to event plan. They might not know how to design a beautiful event. They might not know what goes into that. You might need to help them with that and walk them through, but be a partner. Obviously, don't be condescending or whatever, but just walk them through. Here's like the options that we normally have here. A, B, and C, a little bit about each. I kind of recommend option C for you, and here's why, but that's totally your call. So you let me know and just walk them through the process. But if you have clear guidance, partner, okay, like I look forward to talking to Rob. We have our check-in calls about the event. He wants it to go well. I want it to go well. We're in this together. We have each other's back. Like that camaraderie and collaboration, I think lends itself well. If you can help the chief of staff be as specific as possible for their principal. Like, we're going to fly you in. You're going to be there for 6 hours. We're going to fly you out here. While you're there, you're going to do X, Y, and Z. And you're going to meet these people. And here's the folks you want to focus on. You'll be giving a short speech and remarks here. You'll be cutting a ribbon over there. Like, as much information that you can give the chief of staff to either pass on to the principal, or usually at the end, there's okay, now that we've got this thing, you and me, Rob, have got this thing to 90%. Let's bring in the principal, give them the walkthrough, and then make sure they feel comfortable with that. I think anything in that general direction is going to be music to a chief of staff ears and make them very, very happy.
Well, I'm glad you brought up that info, especially kind of with the itinerary and timing. But let's kind of expand a little bit. Let's say, it's kind of like a 2-day thing.
Yeah.
And, what info should a C-suite executive have? Like, what should an organization be giving to brief the chief of staff so that they are prepared for the entire, let's just say 2 days, 2 days that they're there?
Yeah, I think again, there's that high level. So
Hmm.
pretend like no people don't know anything about what you do or your mission. So give the short executive summary, right, of what you do. That should be like the written or verbal 30-second spiel. And then it's okay, here's the framework, here's the agenda for the 2 days, and have that as the second layer. And then here specifically is where your principal comes in. So here's where we really want to highlight, or here's where they can showcase their whatever, and then break that open. So it's kind of like layers to it, or like a Russian doll, where it's like, here's the big thing, here's the more specific thing, and here's the most specific thing, and walk them through that. And then obviously, anything the principal needs to feel comfortable and to know, like, yep, I got this, and I know how to do what they need me to do. Anything they need, I think you would ask them. So there's general things that they would need, but then some people are particular. So do you need water? Do you need like the stool at a certain height? Do you need like a microphone? Do you like a Britney Spears mic? Do you like a lavalier? Like what kind of stuff do you want? All of those good questions.
Absolutely. And the other one, and I saw this happen once, and this was actually when I was in tech, that someone was allergic to something that was served. That
Oh
went real
no.
sideways real quick. Allergies, people. List of allergies. You gotta, if you're going to have a meal, tell them where it's going to be because I've seen deals not happen because someone's a vegetarian and they take them to a steakhouse. I've seen it happen.
Oh
Just
gosh.
gotta
Oh
be, you
gosh.
gotta be cognizant of those things. So I'm really glad that you brought that piece up. And the other thing that I think is important because things come up like you were talking about with the guest in the wheelchair and how your boss was upset by it. Talk about the importance of backup plans
Mm.
and how a chief of staff is vital, to those being successfully executed.
A chief of staff is like NASA. They will have plan A, plan B, plan C, D, E, F, blah, 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 blah. So backup plans are really important. Having contingency plans. Things will not go to plan. A chief of staff just assumes that. it will not go perfectly to plan, and that's fine. You adapt. I think number one, having the point of contact. So it's like, Rob's my guy. If anything happens on my end or your end, we have the bat phone. We can call each other and work that out. It might be, hey, um, my executive has a tight schedule. So we're going to try to make this work come in here. If they are late, I'm going to text you this word, like plan B or option B or whatever, flip to this script, and then go from there. So you might have stuff planned out in the prep period where, hey, we're going to make this work, but just to let you know, we might have to flip to this. No one panic. Here's the game plan for that. Everyone knows it. So there might be some front running you can do in that case. And then I think it is just, I think you and I have both seen like, okay, that wasn't expected and now the show must go on, so let's do something, but quickly huddle and like figure out something that makes sense to do and step in. So I think if you just have your point people and you both have the approach of like, we will make this work, this will be a great event and we're going to make this work and be creative with it, you will find a path forward.
All right, so speaking of creativity, let's talk about that. And you can kind of go further in the example with the gentleman in the wheelchair, or use another one. But what is something a chief of staff has noticed, from your experience, that you've noticed at an event that others missed, but because you noticed it, it positively changed the outcome of that event?
Hmm. Hmm. I think that I remember we were at our annual risk summit in London. This was a landmark hotel, so it was like very nice, posh on Marylebone Street in London. And we had some folks who this was their first big event. And so the prep and like, here's some of the prompts and questions that you want to be asking folks. One, to get intel, but two, just to make them feel comfortable. And I wish I would have known you because you have a plethora of things to say and like where to stand in line if you're an introvert and like what question to open with and all these things. But just arming folks with, hey, here's a couple different things you can be asking folks and we want to know. I think making sure that my folks are prepared going in, like, okay, I feel comfortable. I know who can work a crowd. I know who's like, okay, you're going to be fine. Like, I'm just going to get you in there and you're going to do your thing. You're going to be fine. This person over here might have a panic attack. They might start sweating. They might literally clam up and just like unable to speak. I don't know my name. So maybe stay closer to those folks. Maybe pair them up with someone they're familiar with. Do those things to kind of situate people. I think again, just knowing your folks and knowing your personalities. I think if you have a strong point person, like if I'm working with you, Rob, okay, here's my roster. Here's who we have. Boom, boom, boom. These guys will be fine. These folks are more this way oriented. These guys are in technology. These guys are in media. And you might say, okay, in that case, the media folks want to be over here. Let's put them over here. We have this, kind of fun station for folks, and they're going to meet people who are going to that station. And for these folks over here, we want to have them at this receiving line because they're going to be next to the event organizer. They're going to have a safety net the whole time, da 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 da. So I think doing that prep ahead of time, and then obviously keeping an eye on things as things unfold and transpire. A good chief of staff will naturally be doing those things.
Very, very well said. And I want to piggyback that with kind of one additional question. It's similar, but it's somewhat different. And it's about, relationship building, but there's also trust. So
Mm.
talk about a time where you had, as a chief of staff, you had an established relationship with someone, who you were representing, the decision maker. There was a big challenge. You resolved it quickly. It's resulted in a positive outcome. And maybe 5 years later, you're in different lives. Now you met for a drink and you laughed about it.
Oh man, that's a really good question. Let me think. It's gotta be from our risk summit. Uh,
You need to write a book about this risk
we
summit,
we
by the
should.
way.
Oh my gosh. Okay. This is just what's coming to mind. We had a series of speakers, right? Everyone's on a schedule and we're trying to like time box the thing, get people out. And there was a great keynote speaker, like just knocked it out of the park. Like, oh my gosh. Like I was like, I've heard this in the dry runs, but that was amazing. So it was phenomenal. And the person right after him panicked. And so we were in our green room. He came literally like bursting through the door, like, whoa. And he was like, where is the laptop? Where is the laptop? And he wanted to change his slides. I was like, no, we have it all loaded. Like, you can't change. Where is the laptop? So we're like, okay. So, like, Cassandra, our marketing director, was like changing the slides 5 minutes before this guy walks on. And he's freaking out. And we're like, look, dude, okay, calm down. Your presentation is still solid. We're changing the slides here. We weren't actually changing the slides. We were changing a draft that like what we already had preloaded the thing in there. So we were doing the thing, talking him down, talking him down. I was putting his microphone on, like, you're gonna be great. It's fine. Stick to these 3 points. We did this in the dry run. Stick to these 3 points. You got this, man. You got this. And we like literally shoved him out there, and we were like, holy expletive, like what is about to happen? And he did fine. He did a great job in the end. But yeah, if Cassandra and I ever meet in a bar, like we will for sure remember this person. Like, oh my goodness, what is happening? Just yes, we're changing the slides. We're changing them right now. But he presented to the deck we had, and he didn't know it.
That's almost like it almost makes me think of like if you've watched that show Hacks. It's almost like Jimmy and Kayla handling Deborah Vance with whatever mayhem she has going on at the moment. You'll be great. Get out there and
Yeah,
not
just
have
go. We
that.
like literally like shoved him. Like, you have to go now. Like, you're going now.
The camera's rolling in three.
Yeah. You're on a five, Miss Minnelli. Let's go. But yeah, that risk summit, I should write a book because that risk summit was 3.5 days. And you know these things. Our staff got maybe 3 hours of sleep a night, maybe. And by the end, Cassandra and I were so dead. And we were like young, into fitness, kind of like image driven. And we had these spiral towers of cream puffs. So, like, probably 100 cream puffs in these like towers of things by the door. And everyone had left, and like the kitchen crew was cleaning up, and there was a tower of cream puffs. And Sandra and I like sat there, and we looked at each other, and without saying it, we just started eating cream puff after cream puff. I probably had 12 in a row, which is like disgusting. And we like, we don't care. Just don't care. Like, no one's gonna eat these. We're done with the event. We did a risk summit, and now we're just gonna stuff our face full of cream puffs.
Now you're just risk. Now you're just risking diabetic shock. Eating 12 cream puffs at once. So that was a really good one. God, you really do need to write a book on that. Oh gosh. So I know we're coming up on time here. And I always like kind of ending with kind of like a one thing question. I thought this would be a really good one for you. What is one reason a chief of staff needs to be everyone's event best friend?
Mm. They are just the behind the scenes strategists. They're your ally. They're kind of a sweeper role. They're behind the scenes. They don't need to be flashy, but they just help everything run better. And you go like, what did the chief of staff do? I can't really put my finger on it per se, but it just went better. Like, that's what a chief of staff will do for you. So I think making that connection is an important piece. And I will say, chiefs of staff will move either with their principal, or they'll get a new principal, or they'll become a principal, or they'll move on. And so if you make a good connection with chief of staff, 2 years later, 3 years later, 10 years later, if you did a good job for them, they will remember and be like, hey, are you still doing that thing? Because now I'm with so and so. Oh my gosh. Yes, we'd love to talk to you. So I think just making those connections is good in the short term, and also potentially in the intermediate and longer term as well.
And that, my friends, is the ultimate engagement ROI story right there. It can reap its rewards 2, 5, 10 years from now. And I've seen that happen time and time again. That was just such good, thoughtful advice. And Emily, this was so much fun. I'm so glad that we were able to do this. And thank you again so much for joining us today.
I love it. Thank you, Rob.
Absolutely, Emily. And for more information about Emily Sander and Next Level Coaching, please visit nextlevel.coach. And that will do it for this episode of Fun and Fundraising. I'm your host, Rob Giardinelli, reminding you to keep it fun, keep it interesting, and your guests will have a great time. Have a great day, everyone, and take care.